Hey everyone, this is Rob over here at BuneBape, and I hope you're having an amazing day. Today I'll be bringing you all another New World video, and this one is going to be a build guide on the build that I've been using since around level 40, all the way up to now level 60. I think this is an extremely potent combo. For anyone that wants a quick summary of the video, I've been mainly using heavy armor, a great axe, as well as a hatchet secondary. I think this is an extremely effective combo. It has very high sustainability as well as high damage output. So in this video, I'll be first going over the gear, equipment, as well as my stat allocations. And in the second part of the video, I'll be showing you 3 different builds that I like to use for the Great Axe, as well as the Hatchet build. But before I get any further into it, if you do like this video or it helps you out at all, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help the channel get noticed. And on top of that, I really do appreciate everyone's love and support for our previous videos. I'm really happy that you all enjoyed it, and I hope to bring out more content like that in the future. If there are any videos you do want to see, make sure to let me know down in the comments below. So with that being said, let's jump into the video. All right, so here we are. First things first, let's take a look at my gear, and shout out if anyone thinks I look like a Nazgul from Lord of the Rings, because I think so, and I also hate that eclipse with the hair. So if we take a look at the gear real quick, as you can see, like I said earlier, I am full heavy armor, although I have been taking a serious look at medium, and we'll probably test that out soon. So quickly going through all of the gear, it is going to be primarily strength and constitution, with more of an emphasis on strength. And while that is luck, it's also kind of by design because I do have a lot of constitution, so I kind of try to offset that with more strength in the gear. Also, shout out to everyone that was asking me in pretty much every one of my last videos of why I'm using a shield in the shield slot. It's because while I was leveling, I did tank occasionally, but I haven't in pretty much the past 10 levels, so I decided to take it off recently. As far as the jewelry goes, all of this is really sad and depressing, but this is what I have, so this is what I'm using. Constitution, ring, and necklace, as well as really sad earrings. Honestly, if I could change it, I would, but this is just all I have ever found. I've never found strength or constitution earrings, so maybe I'll have to buy some off the market soon. As far as the equipment slot goes, I pretty much just use these recovery meals as well as the health potions. And finally, moving on up to my pride and joy, it's going to be my Syndicate Great Axe. So this is, I think, around 50,000 faction points and 2,000 gold from the vendor. So it has really good perks on it, which I think makes it really worth it. Of course, it also has a really high gear score, meaning it does more damage in general. But on top of that, if I did have to put a gem in here, which I will soon, it's either going to be a Void gem or the Opal gem, making it so you deal more damage while you have less than 100 stamina. In my experience, I think those are 2 of the best gems in the game, just based on experience. I haven't done any testing yet. As far as my secondary goes, I have the Hatchet, of course. The Hatchet here I actually just found off like a level 60 boar or something like that. I got really lucky, and the perks on it are pretty decent. I can't complain, although I do wish that the dex was strength. It even came with a gem. So this is going to be my offhand and what I use whenever I am out of abilities on my great axe or I'm fighting a single enemy. As far as the stats go, take a little bit of a look, and it's kind of a hint towards the next section of the videos with the attributes. But I have 160 strength, around 200 con, and 1400 physical with 1080 elemental resistance. If anyone is wondering if I randomly, magically could get one thing to pop up and get more of, or one tip I think people should look out for, if you are in my position, is to get more fire damage resistance. If anyone knows, being in the front line of PvP is tough, and fire mages and fire barrels make it even tougher. So I would highly recommend getting more fire damage resistance in general. With that being said, let's take one more look at the last thing, which is going to be my health real quick. I'll discuss it here instead of the attributes section. So the health I have here is around 11,000, and I think this is really nice. It allows me to get into very tough situations in PvP, especially deal my damage and get out without losing anything. Like my life. It allows me to get out and reset, go back in and deal damage again, because while dying isn't that big a deal in PvP, it is nice to stay alive. You're more useful when you're alive than dead, obviously. So now with all that out of the way, let's take a quick look at my attributes. So as you just saw, my strength is 160, constitution 201, with my committed points being 120 into constitution as well as 80 into strength. My reasoning for that is just while leveling, while playing, whether that be in expeditions or wars, I found that having more constitution is better than having more strength currently. But that's not always the case. It's just generally what I found to be. And also, I do think that the fourth milestone here is very strong, as well as a lot of the milestones in constitution being strong in general. I don't necessarily think the third milestone is very good for strength, but the 100 as well as the 200 milestones are very good. So I might end up switching this out soon here, going to 200 strength and 160 constitution, which I think is still a really good spot to be in. Again, this is just what I found to work. This makes it so you have enough resilience to not get absolutely decimated in PvP front lines or by boss hard-hitting abilities. But that being said, I am definitely subject to changing this around and thinking about stuff to change up all the time. This is just what I happen to have right now. And we'll take a look here again, around 11,000 health and nearly 1,000 weapon damage on my main hand. So that's going to be about it for the gear and stats. Now I'm going to go over and take a look at the first of 3 builds for the Great Axe. So here is the first build. To start off with, I am not going to be going through and showing you and telling you about what every single node does, as this video would be 20 minutes. I'm just going to let you know in general what the build emphasizes on. So this first build is going to be a PvE focus, the second is going to be a hybrid, and the third is going to be a PvP focus. So this build is actually exactly the build that I used in order to defeat the last boss of the Garden of Genesis, which is a pretty high level dungeon. And in that dungeon, we weren't getting enough damage using my PvP build that I did use throughout the dungeon, but on the last boss we needed a bit more damage, so I swapped over to this because execute is hugely important. As for the abilities, the first one here is Reap. So Reap pulls in your enemies, does a slicing motion, heals you for 30% of the damage, and then does another slicing motion. Overall, this ability is really nice to pull enemies off of your backline in PvP or your healer in PvE, and really just gives them some room to breathe, or if an enemy is trying to run away. Speaking of run away, we have Charge, which is a very strong ability. I think it overall isn't really about the damage you deal with the ability, although it does deal decent damage. It's mostly about the utility of the ability. And by that, I mean this allows you to get into really tough situations or get out of really tough situations really easily. With just a press of a button, you can run 10 meters, which is a pretty significant distance. Not many people are going to be able to catch you at that distance unless they're using another similar ability, like the Fire Staff ability that lets you just fly around like a witch on a broomstick. Moving on to the third ability, it's going to be Execute, like I talked about earlier. As you can see, it's mainly used to obviously execute enemies. So if an enemy has less than 50%, you're doing 300% damage to them, which is devastating in every situation. And if they have less than 30%, it's going to be a crit every single time. When I was doing Garden of Genesis on the last boss, I was able to hit over 4,600 damage on a single crit, which is really, really nice. If this was PvP, then that would devastate literally anyone, including tanks. Especially at 30%, that is essentially a person that is dead to rights. If you're able to pull everyone in, get them low, and then use Execute, that can be a great way to pick yourself up 3 or 4 easy kills, although it doesn't always work out that way, which is why this isn't my PvP build. The one node that I am going to touch on is the very final node. This is the 11th point node, and it's called Bloodlust. This is a great ability because, one, it allows you to track down enemies. This is especially good in PvP, as you can probably imagine. There's 30% movement speed to anyone within 50 or 15 meters, is very, very good, and honestly is worth it by itself almost. But the 15% more damage practically all the time, as long as you're facing your foe, is a great, great addition. Overall, this tree really does focus on healing yourself through crits, and so it gives you more crit damage and everything like that, and also makes it so that you're able to penetrate armor. Overall, I think this tree is very strong and is pretty much the cornerstone for all of the builds going forward. So speaking of builds going forward, here we have our second build. This one, like I said, is more of a hybrid build. You could definitely use this for PvE or PvP to pretty decent effect. You're going to have 2 really strong kind of crowd control abilities in Reap, where you can pull enemies, and Maelstrom, which is very similar, except it pulls all enemies around you, not in a single direction. It also has a pretty decent range, gives you some defenses by blocking projectiles, and gives you another damage after the initial damage, making it so the 2-hit ability is very, very strong. If you wanted to make it so that this is a little bit more potent as far as PvP goes, you can unslot feed and go with gravity. This is going to make it so enemies stay in place just a little bit longer. I think this is a great in-between option. You're getting great crowd control abilities from these two main abilities, as well as huge amounts of damage. And of course, the execute, which is going to make it so finishing off bosses is a cinch. And here we have our final build. This is kind of what I like to call the Battlefield Demon build because it is extremely annoying playing against players with this build. So I said, why not just try it out? To be honest, I also didn't check out anyone else's builds. I never have. This is just stuff that I have personally used and worked with and seen that it is very effective in actual play. So if there is things that I could do better with these builds, let me know in the comments down below whether I should slot or unslot a couple of nodes. That would actually be a really great help. A lot of these things, like I said, I just kind of theory crafted and they happen to work. So with this build, this is the build that essentially when you walk on the battlefield, boss music starts because a lot of the healers become scared when they see you. This is great because you can use your speed potion in PvP, run into the backline, gravity well 4 of the healers, use Maelstrom and Reap on them, and that'll usually kill at least 1 or 3 depending on how lightly geared they are. Overall, this is an incredibly fun build, honestly. And actually, that would be the full build. Sorry, almost messed up on that one, but make sure you take Greed. It is always a really good ability and node to have. Just makes it so you're pretty much always doing 15% more damage. Of course, we are using Gravity to further emphasize the pull-in ability of Gravity Well. Gravity Well itself doesn't really do any damage. No one sits in the Gravity Well, so you're not dealing that final hit of damage, but what it does is it groups up enemies, gives you Fortify, and then you're able to sweep them all down using your other 2 large AoE abilities. This is great if you're able to do it in tandem with your other groups, especially in a war. If enemies don't know it too, you can group them up and all of you in the back line can take them all down, or you can group up enemies in the front line and all of your fire mages can burn them down in pretty much 1 second. I found this, again, to be extremely effective in PvP. Let me know what you do use, though. This is going to be the final build for the Great Axe, and I've really enjoyed this build. Even in PvE, I'll use this build just because it's really fun, and I like the way Gravity Well looks. So here we are moving on to Hatchet. This is the 4th and final build in this video, so thanks for sticking around for the whole thing if you have been here. As far as this build, it's really simple. You're not going to go pretty much any into throwing axes because that's not something we're interested in at the moment. That being said, I have taken a look at abilities such as this because with this build, your main downfall is enemies that are really far away from you. Of course, you can't do anything about muskets or anything like that, which is really upsetting. But if you are able to get within range of them, it would be nice to at least be able to throw an axe at them if they are low, for example. And so I might be testing out throwing axes in the near future. With that being said, this build is very much tailored to the front line and is essentially built so that you can get in there and just absolutely ravage the back line or the front line, and then hopefully survive enough to kill a few enemies and maybe even get out of there. By doing that, we're going to be needing Berserk for sure. This ability makes it so you deal more damage for 12 seconds, and during those 12 seconds makes you a complete beast. Makes it so you run faster, heal, break all crowd controls, and makes it so that you're unable to be staggered, aka gives you grit for the entire 12 seconds, which is very, very strong. This is the same effect for 12 seconds as if you had 300 strength points allocated. On top of that, you have the final ability Defy Death, making you literally immortal for 3 seconds upon death. This is great because if you're in the back line, you get a full heal off, a potion, and you're just in there wailing on enemies. And by the time they kill you, you've definitely killed a few of them because they expect you to be dead once you're very low. But of course, you have Defy Death. Feral Rush here is a decent ability. It gives you a nice hop if you're able to get out of enemies' abilities. This will help you do that. And also, if enemies are trapped by your second hit, then they are knocked off balance. Here you have your main damaging ability. This is going to be Raging Torrent for fast attacks, and if you do it all the way, you get a 5th light attack, which does even more damage. This entire tree is built to do more and more damage, so I would highly recommend speccing it all the way out. And if anyone is wondering why I don't take Relentless Fury, I'm just simply not good enough to mix it into my attack style to the point that it's effective. I either end up just light attacking too much or swapping to a different weapon before I think about using heavy attack. That being said, if you are better than me, then this will definitely be a good option because it is just straight up 30% more damage. In lieu of these two abilities, I ended up going over into the throwing tree, which obviously I'm not throwing, but this perk actually gives you straight up 5% additional crit chance for all attacks. And over here, this makes it so that any crits with light attacks or aim throws makes it so you regenerate some stamina. So once you get in there, you're able to dodge a little bit more often. Again, this is something that I found to work and be very effective. Essentially, this build is definitely all foot on the gas, no brakes at all. If you decide to try to play this smart, you can live for a long time. But if you try to play it kind of like a coward, for lack of a better word, and go in a little bit, you're definitely going to get caught off, not really utilize Defy Death to the best of its ability, and you're simply just going to die because you have to be in people's face for this build to work really well. And that's definitely not a slight towards anyone. A lot of people don't like the playstyle of Hatchet, being in someone's face and chasing them down. A lot of people like being at range, and that's why you can go with the Great Axe or with another ranged weapon. So that being said, these of course are just my recommendations, and I would love to see everyone else's. Like I said, I don't really see any builds or look on Reddit too much. I feel like that would kind of ruin a lot of the game for me. I like discovering these things. So let me know if there is anything that I missed that could significantly increase any of the builds' usefulness or anything like that. It would honestly be really great to know if there were big ways to improve these builds, as I'm already having a ton of fun with these builds as it is. Also, let me know down in the comments any builds that you think I should try out, and I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. So thanks again for watching this video. That's going to be about it. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you all very soon.